watch yourself, watch yourself, watch yourself, watch yourself, watch yourself, watch yourself, watch yourself.
The gigantic government sucks. Pursuit of happiness radio is deluxe. Liberty and freedom will make you smile. The pursuit of happiness on your radio dial. Just as cheeseburgers and liberty fries, it's pursuit of happiness time.
All right. Breaking news, folks. This is a big deal. Former First Lady of Massachusetts, Kitty Dukakis, has died at age 90. It's that damn COVID vaccine. That's got to be what I blame the COVID vaccine. Daniel Turner of PowerTheFuture.com. He's live in studio right now. How about that?
It's awesome to be here with you. Thank you.
Daniel, for those that do not know who you are,
Yeah.
and I assume most of our regular radio listeners do, but people are watching us on social media right now. There are people that follow me on social media that don't know what I do for a living. So what the hell are you? And
You're
who
a plumber, aren't you?
I'm a plumber,
Yeah,
correct.
exactly.
Yeah, I plumb for a living. That's exactly it. What do you do, Daniel?
I run an organization called Power the Future, which advocates for American energy jobs, particularly those jobs in rural America, which is where most of our energy jobs are found, right? Yeah, there's some executives who live here in the great city of Houston, but the men and women who are getting their hands dirty and are sweating are in rural communities. And we try to be their voice in the power circles of D.C. and other places.
I know I asked you this before, but did you watch Landman yet? Have you looked at it on Paramount?
I have not, and the only reason why is because it's just one more service I refuse to subscribe to. I already have like too many, and I've gotten rid of most of them. I have a moral problem. I'm older than you, I know that.
No, you're not. How old are you?
I just turned the big 50.
Okay, well, you're not that much older.
Not
than
that
me.
much older, but I am older.
Okay.
TV is one of those things that in the course of my life, I've been amazed at how it's not only revolutionized, but how it's gotten progressively worse. Yeah, we have a lot more options. But remember when you used to just put on the TV and you'd watch stuff. Now then they got cable, and then cable got commercials, even though the whole purpose of cable was to not have commercials. And then they got streaming services, and then the networks got their own streaming services, and now the streaming services have commercials. And now every time there's something on I want to watch, they're like, all right, you have to download this app, and it's $3.99, and you have to create a pro. And I'm just like, screw it. I just miss the old days of putting on the TV and watching something.
I feel like if you're paying for a streaming service and you're getting ads, you're a sucker.
Yeah.
If you're paying for the streaming service that's giving you advertisements, cancel it. What is so great about this thing? If you're paying for something, I think it should be ad-free. That seems like a no-brainer.
And that's why TV used to be free. In the pre-cable era, you bought the TV set itself, right? You plugged it in, you put up the rabbit ears, and the commercials were how they made their money. But the TV itself, you never pay for TV.
Right.
And they got rid of that, and now you have to pay for TV because you have to have cable. And they're like, well, you can use a digital antenna, but that's a load of crap. You have to pay for TV.
I wonder how much of liberal media would not exist were it not for bundled cable packages. Because think about it.
Yeah.
No one watches Bloomberg. Have you ever seen Bloomberg in your life?
No.
No. Fox Business or CNBC. Most people watch that, right? Who watches Forbes? Somebody, not many people. Who's watching CNN? Who's watching MSNBC? Not a lot of people, but you pay for it, or at least you did back when everybody just had bundled cable services, and then that changed. Now there's streaming services, but the problem is the streaming services are kind of doing what the cable companies did. There's Sling and Hulu and YouTube TV. So once again, you might argue like, no, I'm only paying for the stuff I want. Well, you're still paying for a lot of stuff you probably don't watch.
Yeah, think about like when you download music, and there are lots of different services that you can download or listen to music. They never say, well, if you want to listen to this song, you also have to listen to these 3 others. You can pick and choose. But when it comes to cable stations, you can be like, well, I want this one, but I don't want that channel. It's like, well, you have to get it. It's like, well, what if I want that channel? Well, then you got to get these 4 other ones. You say, well, where's the freedom in that? And so, why don't I watch Landman? I'm just angry at the entire industry because obviously there's a lot of money to be made. They've taken away a lot of choice, a lot of freedom. They've made it incredibly expensive. You know what? I'll go back a year and change. My beloved father, who's no longer with us, something we share.
Yeah.
Members of the Dead Dads Club, which is
Right.
not a great club to belong to. First game of Notre Dame season, and he was like, I can't find it on NBC. I was like, it's not, Dad. It's on the Peacock network. And he's like, well, what's that? I'm like, I'm not going to explain to my 80-year-old dad, like, all right, get your laptop, plug in. Like, it just wasn't, I was like, Dad, you're not going to watch the game. He's like, but I always watch Notre Dame on NBC. I'm like, not anymore, Dad, because now they don't care about your 80-year-old dads.
No.
They care about making money. And that's sad. That's just sad.
And if you want to watch it, I guess you could still always go to Hooters. Oh, no, can't do that anymore. What happened to Hooters? Well, do you remember? It's funny because as you're a news junkie and I'm
Yeah.
a news junkie. So there are things that occupy the news cycle for 15 minutes and we'll never forget it. But looking back on it, when you explain the controversy to people that weren't there, they're not going to get it.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Do you remember when YouTube bundled one of their songs in with the new iTunes? It was 2014. YouTube had a new album that came out. U2, sorry.
U2, okay.
had a new album that came out called Songs of Innocence. And it was automatically downloaded to millions of iTunes subscribers.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
I do remember
And
that.
People were out. They were so mad about it.
Yes.
YouTube went over. Not YouTube. Sorry, I keep saying that. U2 went overnight from being one of the most popular bands in the world to one of the most hated bands in the world because they gave away their album for free.
Yeah.
Why were people so mad about that?
Yeah, they didn't like the fact that they put stuff automatically onto your playlist or onto your phone. Or I remember that was that kind of did reputational damage to the band, but like long lasting reputational damage to the band. That people were so angry that they dare shove their music down their throat without them voluntarily wanting it.
Years later, I had a friend that went to Vegas and he went and saw them at the Dome. And I was like, oh, that must have been great. He's like, yeah, man, I went to the Dome. What was that like? It was the coolest visuals I ever saw. And you like U2? Oh, yeah, man, I think they're great. Did they play all your favorite U2 songs? Yeah, it was so good. I think I finally forgive them for Songs of Innocence. I was like, what on earth? What? I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel Turner's in the house right now. And there's a lot I want to talk to you about today. Let's start off with this. For those of you watching us on social media, I want to make something clear. When I say we'll be right back, I'm saying that to the radio listeners. If you're watching me on social media right now, we're not going anywhere. We're just going to play a liner. It's radio jargon. It means when I say we'll be right back, it means literally 4 or 5 seconds from now. But to the rest of you, after this commercial break, we'll be right back. And then we're going to talk about how you're paying Putin to go to war with Zelensky. We'll explain it.
It's never too early to learn that the government is a greedy piglet that suckles on a taxpayer's teat until they have sore, chapped nipples.
The Pursuit of Happiness Radio on AM 950 KPRC.
All right, so like I said, to those of you watching us on social media, you're watching a recording session. I know you're smart. I won't make it more confusing than it needs to be, but you're watching me and Daniel Turner record radio segments that will be heard later this afternoon on KPRC 950, the oldest radio station in Texas. And the reason we're doing this now is because this is when he was available, right? He's here now, so you get it. But so the radio would normally air later this afternoon. And anyway, like I said, you're smart. You don't need a long-winded explanation. But while I have your attention, go to ilovewj.com and buy some cool merch, huh? All right, hang on one second. There we go. All right, the chance of being abducted by aliens in America, according to a new report, is 0.05%, which is roughly the same chance of seeing Congress do something productive. They put out a list today of the states where you're most likely to be abducted by an alien, and I do not believe it. They said that the top states were like, and not in this specific order, but they were California, Florida, and Oregon. I was like, Florida maybe. Not Oregon.
Oregon.
If you're an alien, would you go to Oregon?
How would Oregon and California is way too populous. Florida is too hot. Aliens, as everyone knows, don't like the heat. So
of course, that's what I would have thought of.
Yeah, no,
I always assume,
that's wrong.
I always feel like whenever there's a news story about someone claiming to be probed by an alien, it's always a southern state. It's always a redneck state. And I could say that. I'm cool with the rednecks. The top 3 states where you're least likely in this order were Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Daniel Turner, powerthefuture.com. Do you buy it?
No, I think they have that orders reversed. You would go to those states. You'd go to the southern states. People are a lot friendlier. So if an alien approaches, people will be like, hey, you lost. And they'll want to come and try to give you directions. And the next thing you know, boom, you're getting probed on the mothership.
All right. Well, speaking of abducting aliens, there's another kind of alien getting abducted right now. Is this a good segue or what? And that alien is gang members from South America. More specifically, El Salvador and Venezuela. Now, that'd be MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, depending on what state they come from. Dozens of deported alien immigrants just showed up in Venezuela. Maduro, the dictator of Venezuela, not only is taking the migrants, he is paying for them to be shipped there, to be flown down to his country. Bukele and Maduro are both, I mean, they have almost nothing in common except the fact that they're playing ball with Trump right now. One of them, obviously, right-wing populist, the other communist dictator. But in El Salvador, they've taken in all the gang members. And the latest on this, can you explain this to me? This just happened. The judge that's been all over the news lately, Boasberg is his name. This is the same guy that protected federal agents for illegally spying on Donald Trump in 2016. And he's also famous for having a daughter who runs a charity that provides goods and services to illegal immigrants that I think was previously funded by the federal government, if I'm not mistaken. He has just weighed in and said every one of these gang members must be brought back from El Salvador or Venezuela, respectively, for their trial so we could prove due process if they are, in fact, gang members. This is something that always frustrated me. People seem to misunderstand. The government does not grant us any rights. It doesn't. If the government doesn't decide that you have a right to free speech or a right to defend yourself, those are God-given rights. Those are natural rights, natural law. Thousands of years we've understood this. This goes back to Socrates and Aristotle. So if the government's job isn't to grant you those rights, but to defend your rights, because that's what they do, why then would the government need to defend the rights of foreign illegals?
Yeah, it's remarkable. Their overt desire to protect the quote-unquote rights of illegals. I just wonder where this judicial enthusiasm was when we were all getting told to stay in our house if we don't leave without a mask, right? Or thousands of Americans were getting fired from the military if they refused to get a jab. Or how many people I think it was 29, did Joe Biden lock up because they were caught praying outside of an abortion clinic?
How about that?
I never saw one judge step out of line and say, you know what, I am going to step in here because it's such an egregious violation of natural law of order. But when it comes to the global agenda, when it comes to illegals, these judges are bending over backwards to reinterpret laws to ascribe American constitutional rights to people who have none because they're not American and they're not in the country legally.
I mean, that's what I always thought, right? The other guy when discussing this topic and not discussing gang members from South America, the other name that gets thrown around a lot is Mahmoud Khalil. This was the guy that was protesting at Columbia University. Not currently a student, is my understanding on this. And people will argue, well, he didn't break any laws. Actually, he did. Didn't they hold a janitor hostage for a while? I mean, these are not good people.
Yeah, they locked people out of the building. They locked people out of classes. They prevented classes from happening. And to hide behind our First Amendment and say, that he has a constitutional right to assemble, and this is just an expression. It's just beyond offensive, right? These people are here as our guests. I think our visa program as a whole, and I know President Trump shares this sentiment and is trying to change it in the State Department with Secretary Rubio. Our visa department as a whole needs to be completely reformed, right? We don't need these folks in our country. Why this is the whole diversity is our strength argument. Why do we need to have so many hundreds of thousands of foreign nationals, some of them from countries that truly despise us, or students from China where they're just stealing our information? Why do we have them here on student visas? How is this making America a better place, having people like Mahmoud Khalil, a Syrian national ISIS sympathizer here in Colombia? Is Colombia richer because of his presence? I would clearly argue no. Our whole higher ed system is totally inflated anyway. Imagine if costs would come down if there wasn't the competition from all these foreign nationals.
Yeah, and have you looked at how much money Columbia University is worth? I was just trying to look it up here. I had the number in front of they have. Okay, here we go. Their endowment is $14.8 billion. The way that Donald Trump was able to get Columbia University to make their campus safer for Jewish students, supposedly, that's what they're saying, was to take away federal funding. Now, wait a second. Why does a college with an endowment of $14.8 billion need federal funds? Why are we giving them money in the first place?
So we give them money, and a lot of that is disguised as grants programs, right? We need people to study the migratory patterns of groundhogs. And
butterflies, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they go to the Columbia University School of Butterflies. Boy, imagine the students in that program. And they give them a grant to do this, right? And so I get it to a certain extent. But if you have $14 billion in the bank, you're charging, what, $80,000 per student? Even if you're not charging that student, you're getting the money somehow in a Pell Grant, right? So you're getting that $80,000, whether it's from the taxpayers, whether it's you're getting that money, you're still getting. How much money is in this program? It seems like there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in a system that we talk about how our students are graduating with so much debt. Where the hell's the money going? But it's the same as the American federal government. We have $36 trillion in debt, and yet everyone seems to have $500,000 grants, $5 million. Stacey Abrams got $2 billion grants. We have a huge fiscal irresponsibility program that's so pervasive. We've just begun to scratch the surface, and I think the powers that be, the crazy left, they're the recipients of it, and that's why they're so angry at what Elon and Doge is doing, because he's taking away their lifeblood.
Could you imagine that losing the governorship is probably the greatest thing to ever happen to Stacey Abrams?
Yeah.
$2.8 billion in funding for her NGOs that she's affiliated. That's crazy.
Yep.
If you told me I lost an election, but don't worry, your consolation prize will be billions of dollars in funding for your pet projects. Great. I don't want to be governor. Does the governor even have that kind of money to spend in the state budget?
Yeah, I can't imagine that Columbia has. I don't know what Georgia's revenue is.
Brian
but
Kemp, yeah.
$2 billion is a lot of money. And for perspective, Columbia is revamping its policies, doing something it really does not want to do, which is protect Jewish students. And they're doing that for $400 million. Stacey Abrams got over $2 billion. Think of how much money if you knew a guy who had $2 billion, you'd be the happiest person in the world.
Yeah.
$2 billion is an absurd amount of money, and Stacey Abrams got it with no history in the space, no board, no employees, no office building, no website, no mission statement, nothing. She just said, I'm going to help tackle climate change. Okay, here's $2 billion.
One of the ways, I mean, obviously, this is not how I would have done it. As a libertarian, Republican, and a free market capitalist, I would not have thought of tariffs as a negotiating tool. I would not have thought of withholding funding. He just does things. That being said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I like the results we're getting. It's not the way Trump governs, not what I would have done, but I certainly like it a lot more than what the other option would have been. But he made a point recently that blew my mind. We've been at war now for 3 years, a proxy war with Russia, which is crazy because they're still involved in space exploration with us. We're still technically allies, right? But okay, we're funding a war with Russia. And Trump made this point recently. He said, if they want me to keep giving money to Zelensky, the European Union has to stop buying oil from Russia. It's like, well, wait a second. 3 years. We're still giving them money? Yeah, we're still giving them a lot of money. Who? Almost everyone in NATO. Who? France, Germany, Italy, NATO. The very people that are mad that we're not doing enough for Ukraine are funding Russia's side of the war, Daniel. How could that be true?
It's one of those things that is so absurd that when you explain it to people, it's almost hard to believe and hard to fathom.
People said I was lying about this when I did a video on it.
Exactly, because that's the only response, because you're like, this can't possibly be true. So when the war broke out, all the European leaders and Joe Biden made this proclamation that they were going to have an embargo on Russian oil and gas, not going to buy it anymore. Well, these countries all need oil and gas, as does America need oil and gas. So what Russia did is they said, great, we'll sell our oil and gas to countries like Turkey, or the Koreans will sell it to India, and then India will sell it again, upcharged, to the Italians, to the French, to the Germans, to the Brits. And so that's why also their prices are so much higher. They're paying for the service charge So India and all those countries are making money, and Russia's making as much money as it did from the very beginning. There's not this idea that Russia has this huge stockpile of oil and gas, and Putin's there like, oh, no one's buying my Girl Scout cookies, right? Like it's not stockpiling. It is being sold, but it's being sold to intermediaries, and the Europeans are buying it. President Trump made the point that the European Union, the EU, has spent more buying Russian oil and gas than they've given in aid to Ukraine to fight Russia. So the European Union is funding the war. The European Union is funding with their purchase of oil and gas. They're funding Vladimir Putin. How dare they look at us and say, President Trump doesn't believe in democracy? You're the ones who are funding the Russian army.
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks at this point since Zelensky visited the Oval Office. And famously, there was that little tiff between him and J.D. Vance. And immediately, all these European leaders come out and go, we support Ukraine. We support Ukraine. No, you're the ones that are giving the money to Russia to keep the war going. Sit down, shut up, and we'll try to end the war without your help.
You're listening to the Pursuit of Happiness Radio. I guess it's not available in Canada, eh?
Hey, if you're just connecting to this video, I am hanging out with my buddy Daniel Turner. We are talking about, well, a lot. If you haven't been to powerthefuture.com, go there right now. That's if you work in oil and gas, if you know anybody that works in oil and gas. Part of this, someone asked me recently, I've noticed on your radio show, you guys talk about the energy industry a lot. And for those that don't know, this is like one of the most listened to radio stations in Houston, Texas, the energy capital of the world. So if you're curious why we try to make that part of the conversation regularly, it's because a big part of our audience is interested in it. If you are watching us on social media, leave your comments in the comment section, and we will get to them shortly. Stand by. We're going to start again right now. California is the most popular state for alien abductions. Probably because the tractor beam can't lift anyone in Arkansas, I would assume. I don't know. How does it work? It's confusing. Meanwhile, this just came in. We just learned about this, guys. Breaking news. In the world of entertainment, the longtime drummer for Guns N' Roses has just quit the band. He's tired of being in Axl Rose's shadow. And if you see... that joke tells itself, doesn't it? Because he's fat now. I didn't even get to say it, did I? You already know that. You know the punchline before I say it. I want to talk about the entertainment industry a little bit. Speaking of shadows, Rosie O'Donnell was on TV in Ireland, and I have a habit on this radio show when I play a soundbite of something from the news that I find to be interesting. I like to pause the parts that are interesting, and the problem with the soundbite is everything she says, every single thing she says in this 60-second clip, 55-second clip, is jaw-droppingly stupid. This is a great reminder of how we're not all watching the same news. We're not all getting the same objective truth. Listen to what she says here when asked about the election of Donald Trump on a talk show in Ireland.
You know, a lot of people did vote for him.
Yes.
Do you accept their right to do that and their opinion of him?
Well, I respect their right to do that. I question why the first time in American history a president has won every swing state and is also best friends, and his largest donor was a man who owns and runs the internet. So I would hope that that would be investigated and that we would see whether or not it was an anomaly or something else that happened on election night in America when Kamala Harris was filling up stadiums with people who supported her, and Donald Trump was not able to do that.
Like Madison Square Garden?
It's remarkable that, you know, before we even go into her comments, there's now a new third period of poor Irish history, right? There was Oliver Cromwell and the dissolution of the monasteries. There was Victoria, who starved them during the potato famine. And now there's Rosie O'Donnell. So the third level of Irish persecution has begun. And to my Irish ancestors there in County Kerry, I'm sorry for what America has done to you.
I had wondered about immigrating to Ireland because they just took her in. And you understand it's easy to get to Ireland, right? Because there's all these illegal immigrants and people from Africa and Muslim countries. So we've been led to believe that anyone could just go there and become a citizen. Turns out, no. Only if you're from a marginalized country with poor, this and that, disenfranchised, yes, they'll take you. Otherwise, if you're a white person, you've got to have an Irish last name. Did you know that?
There are lots of programs. If you have European grandparents or great-grandparents, they are desperate for their ancestors to come back because they don't want their countries filled with North Africans and Middle Eastern. So if you are, my grandparents are from both Ireland and Italy, so I could in theory apply for EU citizenship. But you should see the amount of paperwork. You can't just walk in and say, you know, my grandmother was born in County Kerry. Can I be a citizen? It's like, well, let's prove all of this. But if you're from Syria and you're 22 years old and you're wearing an ISIS flag, come right on in and we'll put you in a hotel in Dublin.
Isn't that the craziest thing? And that's just how it is. That's how it is in Ireland right now. Anyway, this soundbite, this video clip of Rosie O'Donnell is fascinating to me for so many reasons. Because she's supposed to be a well-educated person on the left. She's a respected thought leader on the left who believes the election was rigged.
Yes.
And Elon Musk controls the internet. Owns the internet. and then this weird belief that like Trump wasn't able to get people to go to rallies. Trump filled Madison Square Garden. Did you guys get Kamala couldn't do that. That's why they did a rally at Carnegie Hall. Do most people know that?
Well, and the other thing that the stadiums that she did fill is because they flat out lied and said Beyonce is going to be there.
Right.
And so 100,000 people probably did show up, and then Beyonce walked out on the stage and said, vote for Kamala, and she walked out, and people were like, I thought she was going to sing a little something for us. So they did have to lie. I mean, they had to do that to get their numbers up. The largest rally of the 2016 cycle was the Hillary Clinton rally the night before the election. It was at Penn State, Happy Valley, right? Penn State has 80,000 students, I think. But the lineup was Katy Perry, it was Beyonce, it was Bon Jovi, it was Bruce Springsteen. Even if I was a college Republican at Penn State, I would have been like, hell yeah, I'm going to go to that free concert.
Go check it out, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how, if Kamala filled her stadiums, that's how she did it. But the rallies that she did, where it was just Kamala and Tim, you know, 100 people, 500 people would be showing up.
But if you added everyone up, see, here's the thing they won't tell you. In the last month of the election, you could look at the schedules for all four of the candidates, right? And Trump doing 3 rallies a day, 3 different states. J.D. Vance, 3 rallies a day, 2 different states. Tim Walz, same thing, probably traveling to 2 different states, 3 rallies a day. Kamala Harris, 1 rally a day.
Yeah.
Now, no one would say that out loud, but we all knew it was going on. It was in the media. You could make this argument like, oh, men work harder than women, or that wasn't even the point. The point was Kamala was available less than Trump was. So when she was available, if you were interested in her, it's like basic supply and demand. You want to go to a Kamala Harris rally? There's 1 place to go. You want to go to a Trump rally? There's 3 things you can go to today. 6 if you count J.D. Vance.
Yeah, and how disingenuous she was. You saw a lot of those mashups where her speech wasn't just exactly the same. Her gesturing was the same, her voice inflection. So she had practiced in front of a mirror. This is the speech I give for these couple of days. Didn't matter if she was in Georgia. Didn't matter if she was in Michigan. It was the same speech. Now, Trump, I'm sure, had a stump speech as well, but boy, oh boy, did he talk to the local people and ask their local officials and local topics as well. The other thing that Rosie said, which is just so historically dumb, that he's the first president to ever win every swing state. Does she not know about Nixon's re-election, Reagan's re-election?
Reagan won every state except for Minnesota. Every state.
Yeah. The swing states, I'd have to go back and look at Clinton 96. I'm sure the swing states were different back then. I don't know if Clinton's re-election won. I know it was a bloodbath. Bob Dole didn't stand a chance, but I don't know if Clinton won every quote-unquote swing state. I don't think Barack Obama even won every swing state. But he may have. He won a good number of them.
But I don't even know if we called them swing states back then, but if you're just going election by election, this narrative is immediately eliminated in the first ever presidential election.
Yeah.
George Washington won it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on, lady, you can't be that stupid. Is the first president to win every swing state? No. That wasn't even the first time during your lifetime, lady. This is how out of touch they are. You know how to do what you do for a living or what I do I listen to NPR. I watch CNN. I look at the Huffington Post. That's part of the job. It's not just sitting around all day watching Fox News. I'm on the radio all day long. You know, we're on social media. You can't just look at right-wing conservative media. I don't think Rosie O'Donnell is looking at anything except for far-left media in order for her to reach those conclusions. Every swing state, Kamala's filling stadiums and Trump couldn't get anyone to go to a rally. Like, what is she talking about? Imagine living through multiple Trump assassination attempts and not thinking there was anybody at the rally.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine getting to the end of the 2024 cycle and not even thinking Trump has a chance, like being so, of course you think your team is going to win, right? And if you're on the Democrat ticket, if you're working for Kamala Harris, it is your job to tell people, we've got to, as did the Trump people. But both of them knew there was a chance that it could go the opposite way. But they were so convinced. And that's the thing, that's ultimately where Trump derangement syndrome is born, and the hatred for Trump from every judge, every politician. The hatred of Trump is born on Election Day in 2016, when they were so convinced Hillary had it that they've never forgiven him for it. That's the only reason why they hate him, is because the New York Times said 92%. Every pundit was laughing. They were popping champagne that morning, election morning. Like, we didn't even have to make an effort. The Democrat ticket and her entire staff, Robbie Mook, were popping champagne because we just got to get to the end of the day because we have this done. Their hatred for Donald Trump stems from the fact that they think they were entitled to an easy victory, and he took it from them by working harder and by appealing to a larger audience than Hillary Clinton, and they've never forgiven him for it.
Yeah, I don't understand people who will defend everything Trump does, even when it's something you were against a few years ago. Like Trump, a lot of Trump supporters were against more stimulus checks at the beginning of the Joe Biden administration. And then earlier this year, I found myself on Twitter arguing with people over whether or not a $5,000 stimulus check was going to be I was like, I don't think it's a good idea, guys. They're like, oh, that's because you hate Trump. Or it's like, no, I just don't think we should spend more money. I don't understand that. But I really don't understand people that hate Trump no matter what he's doing.
Yeah.
Taxpayer-funded IVF. You guys went around telling everybody he was going to outlaw IVF. He's getting the government to pay for it. Aren't you thrilled? No, they're not thrilled. They don't get it. It's like Rosie O'Donnell really doesn't get it. They're out of touch. And that's why they probably don't understand this. Here's a report today from hotair.com I was just looking at. It was actually an AWFL study. Democrats' long-term strategy for electoral dominance has always depended on three demographic groups: minorities, young workers, union workers, right? Young people are not loving Democrats anymore. Overwhelmingly. You see this report now in the New York Times today. Suddenly, Democrats are getting destroyed on Gen Z voters, especially men. Gen Z men are mostly entirely conservative. And there's probably a good explanation for why that's true. But before we get to any of it, here is CNN's Van Jones, kind of like Bill Maher. He's one of the people on the left you wish more people on the left would listen to.
If progressives have a politics that says all white people are racist, all men are toxic, and all billionaires are evil, it's kind of hard to keep them on your side.
Okay, 1 in 3 black men in Texas voted for Trump. 33% of black men. Now, that might not seem like a lot. We haven't seen that kind of numbers in the Republican Party since like the mid-20th century. Yeah. Daniel, that's phenomenal.
It really is. And the difference between this current Democrat Party and the Democrat Party of not long ago, of which Van Jones was part of, right? He was a key advisor to Barack Obama,
right,
his entire presidency and his 2008 campaign. Obama at least campaigned as someone who cared about everybody. He governed very differently, right? Once in office, he was a divisive, race-baiting, everything Van Jones just said. But he was smart enough on the campaign trail to pretend that he cared about that audience. Today's Democrat Party can't even pretend they care about that audience. They go out of their way to say, we don't want them. We don't want their vote. We don't want them as part of this tent. Well, okay, so you're left with the leftovers, and the leftovers, you can't make a great sandwich sometimes out of the leftovers.
Have you seen this guy on YouTube? There's a really good on the street reporter named No Cap on God. And he always plays a character, kind of like he's Borat or Bruno. He's not Sacha Baron Cohen, but that's what he's doing. He's doing characters. He went to the Democrat National Convention last summer, and he met Jerry Nadler. And he asked Jerry Nadler in like a very effeminate, gay voice. He was like, why can't we raise taxes on straight gay men or straight white men? And Jerry Nadler said, well, if we win this election, we can.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was having this conversation with me. Why don't white men vote for Democrats? Why don't men vote for Democrats? And I mentioned this clip. I showed him the clip. My friend says to me, but Kenny, that's a comedy video. Jerry Nadler didn't know it was a comedy video.
No.
Jerry Nadler thought he was talking to a real on the streets reporter. And it ended up as the punchline to a comedy bit. But Democrats really think this. And then they wonder, well, why won't people vote against their own self-interest? because I don't want my family to suffer because of some guilt that my grandfather felt.
Yeah, and when you have no core set of principles, you're just lustful for power, which most Democrat elected officials are. A lot of elected officials on the Republican side, but that is the only principle Democrats have now, is the position to lust for power. You find yourself saying these things that are just so insane. Jasmine Crocker, for example, Crockett, I forget which her last name is. You know, just got a warning from the Attorney General's office because she says, we got to take out Elon Musk. We got to take him down. What does that mean? How do you get to the stage of your political career that you dislike this man so much that you say these things on the record? How do you dislike one group of which in theory Jerry Nadler is part of, one demographic so much because they don't vote for you, that you're willing to say we need to tax them more than we tax other folks? Just the lust for power makes you absolutely insane.
Yeah, that you'll say the craziest thing. And isn't Jerry Nadler a white guy like you?
Theory, you know?
All right, well, to your point, the Jasmine Crockett thing, before we break here, we got to talk about this. I think this is the new leader of the Democrat Party.
100%.
Because it's not Bernie.
Yep.
It's not. Bernie Sanders has got a problem. He was pro-gun for way too long. They used that against him the last time he ran for president. It might be AOC. I don't know, though. She's trying to scale it down lately. It's not Elizabeth Warren. It sure is crap not Tim Walz. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but real quick, here's Jasmine Crockett.
Just in case the slow people listening decide to click this up later, I just want to say that I have never promoted violence whatsoever, yet I've also never made excuse for those violent actors such as the ones on January 6th. So Pam Bondi, if you have an issue with terrorism, maybe you should talk to your boss about locking back up those guys.
All right, so I don't think most people thought that anyone on January 6th shouldn't be punished. The question became, should they sit in a jail cell for
on
9
March
months
29th.
for 9 months without anybody pressing charges against them? But all that being said, you know, this isn't about what happened yesterday. It's about what's going on today. And what is going on today is that people are firebombing Tesla dealerships, and Jasmine Crockett seems to be cheering it on.
On March 29th, it's my birthday. And all I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down. Yes. Listen.
It sounds an awful lot like she's calling for violence to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. You know, and this is again what I was saying. This is the lust for power and the lust for the spotlight. And Jasmine Crockett just wants to be popular and famous. You know, she's watched the Bernie Sanderses, the AOCs, and she wants to be part of that train. And she realizes being the most outrageous possible is the way to do it. But she is an elected member of Congress, and she's supposed to at least somehow tone down the rhetoric. Remember the very first day of Congress, January 3rd of this year, when Hakeem Jeffries said we need to make this call for bipartisanship?
I remember it. It was 10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to work together. There's no desire for any of them to do that because there's just too much lust for power. And it's sad. Jasmine Crockett could be a leader of her party, but she's not too dumb. She's just too self-involved. She's too proud of her position, of her growing popularity, and she's too desperate for fame and attention that now she's becoming insane. You know what she's becoming? She's becoming Kim Kardashian, who the second her fame dwindles, she's like, what naked thing can I put in my butt now? Like, what photo shoot can I do? How can I? And then you see it on the headlines. Kim Kardashian strips down nude with a boa constrictor. It's like, of course she is, because she was out of the headline for a second. That's what Jasmine Crockett is doing. She's doing the most outrageous thing possible to always stay on the news.
By the way, speaking of Jasmine Crockett and Elon Musk, it was revealed recently, you know, as taxpayers, we're required to pay for their car rentals. They're leasing a car in Washington, D.C. Her car, according to this report that just came out, $999.96 per month. Now,
nice
that's
car.
The car that she's renting out.
That's
right?
a nice car.
That's a nice car. It's a luxury car. According to what a lot of people speculate, that's the exact amount of money in Washington, D.C. it would cost to rent a Tesla Model S, which I don't know if you've heard about this, but apparently that car company it's not owned by Steve Jobs. Apparently.
Truth when it does of sarcasm, right here on Pursuit of Happiness Radio.
It's hard work to host a show with a couple of knuckleheads.
Ken Webster Jr.
Hey, real quick before we get out of here, we want to do one more quick segment. on Disney. And there's quite a bit to say about Disney today. But before we get to any of that, my boy Daniel, tell me about your website, Daniel. What is it you do, and why should people follow you on social media?
Powerthefuture.com. Power the Future on all of our platforms. And yeah, please follow me on Twitter. I'd welcome the conversation, the chance to talk to you. But yeah, we fight for these rural energy jobs because sometimes even their elected officials don't fight for them. You know, you have some great representatives here in Texas. You have some not so great. And even though Texas is the oil and gas capital of the world, there's a lot of elected officials in Texas who, when they get to Washington, D.C., would much rather buy Texas from Venezuela than from Midland.
Boy,
and so we try to fill that void.
It's incredible how true that is and how frustrating it is. All right, we want to keep this thing going with you guys, and we're going to read some of your comments, so hang on. Oh, we're back from break. Greetings, kids. Over the weekend, we finally got a taste of snow woke. Reason.com, I don't always agree with Reason.com on everything, but I find their reviews and analysis of things to be very interesting, especially when it's economic information. They went out and they watched Snow White, the new Snow White movie, and they pointed out this isn't even that it's woke. They called it straight up socialist. They said the new Snow White, it's a socialist version of Snow White. Now, interestingly enough, Rachel Zegler, most people didn't know who this woman was before she starred in this movie. I didn't know who she was. The controversy with Snow White has gone on now it feels like it's been happening for years at this point. It started off with Peter Dinklage telling people he was disgusted at the thought of Disney doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So Disney said, not to worry. We'll hire tall people to play the dwarves. and then that upset people. So then they got CGI dwarves. And somehow that wasn't even the most controversial part of all this. Rachel Zegler, the star of the show, of the movie, comes out and tells people Snow White's weird. We've all seen that video. I won't waste time right now. Snow White's weird. It's about the patriarchy and a guy and the male gaze, and it's a weird movie. Snow White was a masterpiece. It was considered to be one of the greatest pieces of art in the early 20th century in film that ever existed. It's weird how people on the left, especially young people, can't look at anything from the past through the lens of the past. They can only look at it by modern day standards. They don't understand Christopher Columbus. They can't understand the need to keep up old statues. They don't get it. Rachel Zegler doubles down on this by actually going out and saying she wishes violence on Trump supporters. She doesn't like Israel, even though she's co-starring in a movie with a woman who's a proud Israel activist, Gal Gadot. She said she doesn't think she's getting paid enough for the movie. She should get paid for every second that someone watches it on a streaming service.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed.
She deserves to be paid for every hour. Well, as it turns out so far, that would mean that she owes Disney money because they're losing a lot of cash right now on this film. But then there was this little doozy. She just couldn't stop saying dumb things. Here's another one.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do.
I'm sure she's about to make a great point, but I'm going to cut her off right now. Oh. Isn't it weird how rich, beautiful people who are rich and famous and get everything they want still insist that we feel sorry for them? They still want to be victims. How do they do it?
She's such a victim. She has the most difficult life imaginable. It's remarkable, the self-indulgence. It's remarkable that if she would call herself an artist, right? Because everyone in Hollywood is an artist. It's amazing that as an artist, she could look at other people's art with such disdain that she not only needs to fix it or rectify it, that it's anathema. It has to be absolutely erased from our collective memory. And that's what she did with the original Snow White. Those artists made it back in the day. Those animators who worked, by the way, by hand, right? There were no computers doing that. Who did the sound, who did the music, who did the... What about their art? Doesn't it deserve a place in our cherished history? But no, not when you're Michelle Zunkler, whatever her name is. Like, I don't even know who the hell this girl is, and yet she is now in charge of interpreting what was once a great part of American cinema photographic history.
It's always, at any time in my adult life, when I look at what people in Hollywood are mad about, it's always so detached from reality. And to really emphasize that point right now, Rachel Zegler wants you to feel sorry for her because she's being judged for her opinions on Palestine or whatever. But meanwhile, here in the United States, hell, in California, in the state where I assume she lives because she works in Hollywood, we're watching on the screen right now video footage from a CVS pharmacy. We're not just the pharmaceuticals, not just the hygienic products. Everything in the store is under lock and key. Everything, refrigerated goods, food, potato chips, and shampoo, anything. Walking around the store. How does it get this bad, Daniel? Explain to someone in Hollywood what it's like to walk into a CVS pharmacy just to buy goods for your house, and you need to get an employee that works there to unlock everything because that's how bad it is in your community.
But you know what? She's not doing it, and that's the big difference, right? And this is kind of what the ethos of power of the future is. People like her make these decisions. They advocate for these policies, but they're not affected by it. It's the same as the climate change people who say, we need to shut down this coal plant in Longview, Texas. Well, you don't live in Longview. It's not your job that's on the line. It's not your utility rates that are going to go up. So you don't really care about your position. And it's the same when it comes to these criminal justice reforms. Rachel will send in an assistant who she probably berates because the guy took so long to buy whatever product that she wanted at the store and probably throws things at her. Right? We hear all the time about politicians and actors and actresses who throw things at their production assistants and their personal assistants. She's probably an awful person to work with. Because,
I would imagine she is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Abusive have to be. Here's another example of how out of touch they are right now. I couldn't believe this was a real thing. I saw this at the end of last week, Daniel. New York Times headline right now. DoorDash announces buy now, pay later partnership with Klarna. I'm sorry. People are financing meals. DoorDash will let users buy now, pay later for fast food. CNN is saying this is a very worrying sign for the economy. Yeah, I would think that it would be. If you can't afford to have a meal delivered to you right now, don't get the meal delivered. Like, in what scenario would this be reasonable? You don't have any money now. You're starting a new job on Friday, and you need to clear out your condo, but you need to eat, so you can't afford to go out and buy food. What very specific scenario would this situation of buying a meal now and paying for it later actually not be alarming?
Yeah, it's insane. Why is this any different though than your credit card? Like, if you use DoorDash, don't you just put it on your credit card? You don't pay cash when the guy shows up with your food. So why do you need to have a different program to set? Because you're maxed out on your credit cards?
Yes. Yes, I assume that's it. Yeah.
So not only are we probably eating unhealthily because we're having food delivered, and by the way, and I've done DoorDash when I'm in the city. I can't where I live in the country. Nothing delivers to.
I get things delivered all the time. I'm not judging.
No. But if you can't afford to pay for it, then you probably shouldn't be able to buy it. It's kind of the argument that we're having with the SNAP, and should you be able to use SNAP with soda, SNAP for candy. And again, it's this larger government entitlement program that has made people fat, unhealthy, lazy, and now entitled.
Daniel, we're up against a clock here, but I could talk about that for an hour.
Yeah.
The libertarian in me, I cannot believe there are libertarians right now making the argument, no, don't let the government tell you what to spend the money on. You don't need Coca-Cola.
No.
You don't need Twinkies. If this is money for food and liberals and people on the left are making the argument, oh, healthy food's too expensive, well, then why on earth would you be allowed to use your food stamps to go out and buy Cheetos? That's insanity. It should not be fun to be on food stamps. We should create a system where we encourage people to get off of it. I'm Kenny Webster. I want to thank my buddy Daniel Turner, powerthefuture.com. Follow him. Daniel, is it Daniel Turner PTF?
Daniel Turner PTF. And thanks for having me on, brother. It's always a pleasure.
My brother, one of my favorite people. Hey, if you don't mind, share this video if you watched us on social media, if you listened to us on the radio, follow us on social media, subscribe to the podcast, and download the Walton & Johnson smartphone app.
You are listening to the Pursuit of Happiness Radio. Tell the government to kiss your ass when you listen to this show.